Okay, inshallah, I think we can make a start. إن الحمد لله الحمد لله نستعينه ونستغفره نعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته everyone. So
Wow,
Jazakumullah khair, Brother Imran and Brother Waji, for joining in.
my
Just a
pleasure.
quick introduction to both the brothers, alhamdulillah. So Brother Imran obviously is from IRA, the UK organization, which obviously is heavy in speaking about the subject under consideration today. And Brother Waji, mashallah, with loads of experience and with a lot of activism, mashallah, under the patronage of Youth Club Pakistan, has been on the scene for a fair number of years, I would think. Brother Waji, how many years now, mashallah?
I believe 13, 14 years.
MashaAllah, tabarakallah.
Mashallah.
And Brother Imran, similarly, I think yourself,
No,
9, 10
nowhere near,
years, roughly?
not
No?
yeah, around around 9 years, not 14 years.
Okay, MashaAllah, tabarakallah.
Mashallah.
Okay, Jazakallah khair once again for joining in. So now, we were actually trying to get one brother from India as well, but unfortunately we couldn't get him. So there might be a brother who would be joining in from a questioning perspective from India. We'll see if he joins or not. He said he will. So, so we'll see how it goes, inshallah. So we'll start with speaking about a little bit about, let's say, if we start with Brother you, Imran, and you can give us kind of a very concise summary, because I want to stick to the timeline of the show. I don't want to go beyond 1 hour. We can have another, inshallah, show in a few weeks' time, inshallah, if we are unable to cover all the content. But give us kind of a summary. Again, we are going to be concentrating on the Muslims, not obviously atheism from any other perspective, but how it's impacting Muslims, whether it's Europe, whether it's UK, whether it's the Muslim countries, etc. So if you can give us a summary of how the impact of atheism has been in your experience and exposure, mashallah, which is quite rich, in UK and in Europe at large, and even maybe in North America.
Okay, so Bismillah. The first thing I guess it's important to understand is that on the ground, atheism isn't that predominant, from the perspective that it doesn't have that much sway. Although when we look at social media and we look online, we look at YouTube, we look at the horsemen of atheism, those that are popularizing it, those that are you consider the spokespersons of atheism, they are making a lot of noise online. They're writing a lot of books these days. They're really trying to push their particular agenda of godlessness and wanting to spread this outlook. However, on the ground, what we've realized, even in the UK and Europe, it hasn't got that much traction, surprisingly. What you find, generally speaking, in the UK and the West in general, is people yes, they are more secular. They have become extremely godless. But what you find when you speak to people is that not that they're atheists per se, as you define it philosophically speaking, or even materialists. They are people who are simply busy with life. They are busy with material worldly things, and they don't have time for the question of God. They haven't really considered the question of God. And when you ask them, they're neither here nor there, generally speaking. So if you were to categorize them, you would say they're probably agnostic, right? They're not really sure and they're not really interested. That's with the majority of the people. But this sort of hardline atheism and naturalism that's been pushed online, especially, and you see, figures like Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, etc., it's not very prominent. If anything, it's dying down now. As far as my little experience in Pakistan and Asia and the brothers I know in these areas, something that I've, from the little time I've had there, anecdotally been able to pick up, again, it's not that prevalent. It seems like on university campuses, it's popular from the perspective that it's just something that's cool and in fashion at the moment among certain people. Not that it has any strength from a logical perspective, or that it holds any weight from that perspective as a worldview or an ideology. It's just simply fashionable, it's cool, and people just seem to be following the trend. That's what seems like that's happening.
Okay, Jazakallah khair. And Brother Baji, can you give us similar context in Pakistan?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. First and foremost, Jazakallah khairan for inviting me, and Salaam alaikum to all those who are listening to us right now. I think this is a very important issue, and I would actually agree with Brother Imran that even in Indo-Pak, this thing is being pushed to a huge extent and being able to, appear as if this is basically growing on a very large scale. I think in depth, in our countries, and I will talk from that perspective, there is a huge issue of intellectual inferiority complex. And people are more and more, thinking that maybe the kuffar or the non-Muslims or the West or people in Europe have developed maybe because of the very idea that the belief is more towards the denying the existence of God, and they, because of their inferiority complex, they are adapting these values, thinking that we can grow as a nation if we put the religion on one side, especially Islam. So it's not more of an intellectual issue; it's more kind of emotional, kind of inferiority complex, and they're trying to push this whole narrative because at the end of the day, they find religion or Islam as a hurdle in terms of trying to be able to live the life that their own way. So we see a lot of educational institutes trying to push the very idea, and they can get confused between evolution and the Darwinian understanding of evolution, and they try to push the narrative, and they try to educate in terms of telling the kids, the more you're going to be religious, the more you're going to be backwards. And the media is actually promoting the very idea that look, this personality being religious, look at how backward they are. They are like not aware of whatever is happening in the world. And students are more and more becoming developing this understanding like we are going to become religious, we're going to lose out on the world. So in short, Hubb dunya, having the aspect of wahan, and the more, and being more focused towards this world. And of course, inshallah, we'll be talking more on this issue. So in short, inferiority complex, being more inclined towards this world, and lack of understanding of religion, being able to get more exposed to the very misconceptions of religion. And on the other hand, there are certain societies which are trying to promote the very idea that it's growing on a large scale, which is not.
Okay, Jazakallah khair for that as well. Now, just for our listeners, inshallah, our lines are open for Q&A, which you can actually post in the comments section. So we should be able to get your comments in. If you have any questions, inshallah, we'll be taking them in the second half once we have covered, inshallah, some of the topics which we want to cover. So coming back to you, Brother Imran, if you can speak a little bit now about how in a Western context this concept has come in. Yani if you do a comparison of how Christianity suffered through the Renaissance, and then exactly the death of the soul, then the kind of the segregation of the demarcation of the clergy and the state. Again, there's a lot of history behind it, but for our audience, for the big audience, from where has this concept actually evolved? So if you can speak a little bit about that.
That's a very, very good question. And I think it's important to touch upon the history briefly, because something you get to realize as you study atheism is that as a worldview, as an ideology, it's very weak. It has no strong foundations. You can dismantle it within seconds. But then it makes you think as to why it still remains. Why is it still popular to whatever extent it is? And the reason is because we have to remember that atheism is not in a vacuum. Especially in the West, we know from during especially the 18th and 19th century, we had the Enlightenment period. And the whole idea behind the Enlightenment essentially was where prior to the Enlightenment, about 500 to 600 years, Christianity was dominant in all spheres of life, whether it be education or whether it be your social dealings. It was all of Christianity permeated everything, every facet of life. Now, what this also meant was that there was a lot of restriction as far as studying the world, inquiring and gaining knowledge about the material, physical world around us. It was almost, if you like, anti-science from many different perspectives. And there was a lot of tension there throughout that history, up until the 18th and 19th century, where some of these philosophers and thinkers got together and said, well, we need to change things. And then there were some revolutions that took place, for example, the French Revolution, etc. And cut a long story short, what happened, the idea behind the Enlightenment thinkers was essentially to cut people off from their focus on the vertical plane and to get people to focus on the horizontal plane, meaning they wanted to do away as much as they could with this idea of religion, in particular Christianity, And therefore, what Christianity came with, which was the belief in God and the focus on the hereafter, the eternal life, etc., and to get people to focus on the material. And one of the driving ideas behind this was of progress, that we want to progress from a material, worldly perspective. And what you see happen during the Enlightenment period is that the thinkers, they developed this amalgamation of Judeo-Christian values on one hand, which allowed for the ethics and values and the existential framework required for society to progress, and they combined this with Greek logic and Greek thought, so reason and rationality. And this mixture led to the world that we see today. Now, what happened after the 19th century, the world was obviously now focused on the material. There was a lot of focus there, a lot of focus on the sciences, a lot of focus on, along this sort of helped and propelled the Industrial Revolution as well from that perspective. And anyone born after the 19th century essentially was born in a world which is focused on the dunya. It was all about the material world. It was all about what was in front of you and making them as most you can of this world. And therefore, from this perspective, atheism naturally fell into the mix, because atheism, the whole idea is there is no God, there is no creator. Therefore, you live once, do what you wish, right? Along with this, you have other ideologies today which promote this, which is, for example, materialism, which pushes the idea that you want to focus on the material world and gain as much of it as you can. So this goes hand in hand. Then you have, obviously, science. Now, science as a method is beautiful. Maybe you can discuss this later, but it's a brilliant method. But unfortunately, again, it's almost been hijacked by certain materialists and atheists who want to present it as a tool that does away with the belief in God. So all of these things are going hand in hand today. And essentially, at the end of the day, what seems to be happening, the struggle seems to be between the dunya and the akhirah, the unseen, the hereafter, God, the creator of the heavens and the earth. People want you to focus on the material as opposed to the true reality of human beings, which is that we were created to know our creator and to worship him. And essentially, this is where you find atheism. And this is why I believe it still, has whatever sway it does in society, because it goes hand in hand with everything else.
Okay, Jazakallah khair. Now, Brother Brother Vaji, if we want to, let's say, project this same kind of context to a Pakistani environment, do you think that in the Pakistani context, the same kind of philosophy has thrown? Or do you think there is a different aspect to it?
I would like to highlight the fact that, this entire domino effect which has been going on from the past, same thing happened in the Christian society, where people, yes, they were focused on the hereafter, but the idea of ignoring the very reality or the needs of the world, where you make this world, a place of suffering in terms of not catering to the very needs of how people would be able to make this life better as compared to, of course, hereafter, which should be the goal as well. And we need to be able to understand the fact that this idea of eliminating God from all areas of life, whether it be education or politics and everything. And after this whole, thing of colonialism, where Indo-Pak or Pakistan and India became, separated, and entire thing was being dictated to the fact that, our education system is going to be this way, our political system is going to be this way. So people were more focused towards the material aspect. So it was more about the idea of capitalism. It's about being able to, take jobs. So people did not see, a lot of benefit in terms of being able to acquire religion from that perspective, or be able to take benefit from that. So things got, in opposite directions. Things, alhamdulillah, are getting better right now. But when this happened, people saw no benefit in the very idea why we need to acquire, an understanding of God, because we are more focused towards this world. And the more and more this got communicated, that if we involve religion in that particular materialistic life, we are going to lose away from this world. And hence, they were more and more focused towards the material life, and they're eliminating. And also, of course, we need to be able to recognize our faults as well, where a lot of people try to, they try to focus on the fact that, if we focus on the dunya and try to focus on technology, we're going to move away from religion. And of course, from the technological aspect, from the able to relate religion with the worldly studies, we failed to a certain degree from that perspective. And people started having this understanding, okay, fine, religion does not cater to the very needs of the world, or be able to answer a lot of questions which, the world is asking right now. And, we have the situation right now where people find no benefit in terms of acquiring religious studies or be able to amalgamate to a certain point where they can actually take benefit from it. So worldly education became a totally separate thing. And over here, the same case is developing. But on the other hand, I would like to highlight the fact that, even the secularists agree to the fact that in Pakistan, religiosity is actually increasing. Of course, there can be a debate into a huge extent, but, we need to understand that things are changing right now. People are becoming more and more aware. So same thing is happening to a certain degree. Same historical event going on, but in a very different manner. But alhamdulillah, things are getting better.
Okay, I think your connection has a slight issue, but it's working, alhamdulillah.
Okay. Yeah, alhamdulillah.
Okay, now coming back to you, Brother Imran. Now, obviously, in this session, we are not going to be going heavy into philosophical discussions because this is not what our core audience is. What we want to concentrate upon is that, I've understood your background as well, mashallah, and what was your personal experience, from your teenage years all the way to coming back to, mashallah, understanding Islam. So, in a kind of a Western context, do you actually believe that a lot of our youth, our Muslim youth, are taking kind of the same trajectory when they're coming back to Islam, or there is something else going on as well?
Yeah. So again, it's a brilliant question. I think what's happening is, generally speaking, across the board, whether it be Pakistan or the UK or anywhere in the world, there seems to be a revival amongst the Muslims in coming back to the deen and coming back to practicing. And I believe one of the reasons is because we live in a world today, as it's moved away from God and has divorced itself from the idea of God and religion. Therefore, naturally, we've pushed ourselves into a position where almost all meaning is removed from all aspects of life. So we almost live in a very sort of nihilistic, the term is nihilism or nihilistic world, meaning a life that has no meaning. It has no real intrinsic value or meaning. And this is what people are starting to realize. And therefore, people are not satisfied. There is something that's missing. It's empty. And as we know from our Islamic tradition, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created every single human being to know Allah and to worship Him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ, that He did not create us and the jinn kind and the human beings for no other reason except to worship Him. It's a part of our fitrah to recognize that there is a creator and that He deserves worship. And people, there is something missing, and there is something that's pulling people back towards the deen, because they're realizing, although from a material perspective, we have everything you can imagine, right? Many of us live more richer than the kings of the past, but there's still something missing. There is an emptiness inside, and therefore people are turning back naturally towards the deen. Now, this is also happening amongst non-Muslim communities as well, or people. But unfortunately, what's happening in their case, and this is where there's a beautiful opportunity for us to get involved in the da'wah as well, is that they don't have that background. They can't fall back on Islam. They don't have that understanding. So they're ending up moving towards sort of new age spiritual movements. This is why you have people like, I don't know if you guys have heard, Sadhguru, for example, is a very good example, where he's getting a lot of traction globally because he's appealing to this audience. And what he does is very clever. He basically injects enough spirituality into the mix, but at the same time, he's appealing to the secular mindset, which is all about this individualistic outlook, that I am my own God. I know what's best for me. I'll do what I want to do. So he's allowing that to carry on, but with a little bit of an injection of spirituality. And that mix is really attracting people. And I really believe if people truly heard the message of Islam, they would incline towards Islam greatly, especially in the times that we live in, inshallah.
Okay, Jazakallah khair. So, Brother Brown, before I actually speak about again from a Pakistani context, I would like our audience to listen to this small little clip from Hamza Ali Abbasi, obviously the artist from Pakistan. And let's listen to his core concerns as to what exactly were his issues around atheism. I'll just paraphrase what Hamza Ali Abbasi is basically saying. So what he's saying is that he couldn't actually get answers to his questions which he had. And his main concern was living in Pakistan, that actually he was asked to blindly follow a lot of what was being told by his elder, by his kind of the clergy, and he was not able to get answers to his questions. Now, brother Vaji, from your again experience, mashallah, working at the grassroots, absolute grassroots within Pakistan, we listen to people like Hamza, and then what again in your experience, why people, not only from an atheistic perspective, but generally speaking, why people are, yes, there's this spectrum of people coming back to the religion, but on the other hand, there is a mass population which is also going back, right? Especially the youth. So why is this happening? Why is this struggle going on in Pakistan?
Especially in case of Hamza Ali Abbasi, I would like to first highlight his issue over here, that he's been going through a lot of confusion throughout his life. As he said in his interview that he was an atheist before, but then, he was trying to look for a lot of answers. The thing is that one of the issue over here in Dupak is that, especially the celebrities, they look for answers from individuals who are more or less available in the mainstream. The idea of making scholars accessible, to be able to know who to take knowledge from. Now, Hamza Ali Abbasi was at the same time coming from a different background. And this is the case of a lot of individuals, not a lot of celebrities. Even I did a show recently with a very known celebrity in Pakistan. And the very question which he was asking himself was like, I had a lot of answers. I didn't know where to go to. But at the same time, he was looking for answers in his own circle. He was trying to think about a lot of solutions from the very background that he was coming from. Now, Hamza Ali Abbasi, in his case, was confused, and he was actually listening to a lot of people who were coming on television. And now he's associated with a particular individual or a group who have been able to, mold or answer a lot of his questions based on the fact that his confusion is actually increasing. Now, a lot of individuals are turning towards atheism because of the fact that they find a lot of restrictions regarding what they want to do. So a lot of things have been made available to individuals over here. And when they look at religion, they find it becoming a hurdle in terms of how they want to live their life. So they might ask a lot of questions which might be arising in the mind, like what is the punishment for somebody who leaves Islam, or maybe the marriage of Aisha radiallahu anha. And somebody might come up, tell them, okay, man, these ahadiths are actually not authentic. And, these were fabricated. And he's like, oh, that actually answers. So at the same time, look, it actually becomes a sort of a positive thing for them to be able to not go in the category of kufr. But at the same time, they're still confused. And this is actually what is happening with Hamza Ali Abbasi right now. He thinks he is getting a lot of answers, but at the same time, our individuals need to be able to understand that there are so many scholars out there. And this is the reason why we again and again concentrate in our organization that scholars need to take these means and be able to answer a lot of questions online, because people are getting confused more and more. We have a lot of individuals answering a lot of questions. It's information for them, but it's actually not right knowledge. So our university going students need to understand that our religion answers a lot of questions. They need to be able to get in contact with the right individual. I've been teaching in a lot of universities, and when you talk to them and you give them actual reasons, they get to understand, yes, we don't have to be apologetic towards certain things. We know that there was a cultural difference, there's a huge time difference, things were different. We can't take understanding from our current situation, be able to understand what happened 1400 years ago. So we need to be able to give them a proper understanding, tell them about the historical facts. If our generation is not going to know about what happened in the past, be able to completely understand the religion, of course these confusions are going to be there. And eventually, when they listen to the wrong individuals, and based on our experience, it's like maybe they heard some khatib in the masjid speaking about this world not being worthy enough, and you have to use a soap, or maybe not use a telephone, or maybe not use the internet, and it gets stuck in their head. Why am I being able to leave? Why am I being told to leave certain things which I can actually use for a lot of benefit? And it becomes a reason for them to be able to generalize that understanding towards the entire religion and reject it all together. So they're like, maybe I don't want to leave up a lot of things. And these people are asking me to leave certain habits of mine, which may be becoming harder for me to be able to become closer to God. And maybe they make it as an excuse. So we need to be able to educate, and over here I'd add education system is playing the role. They make our youth be able to live up to their, full, live up to their desires and be able to, do whatever they want. And when they get to understand, oh my God, you can't listen to this, you can't do this. Maybe, I'm better off, because the idea is again, the hubb dunya, the looking from the perspective of the materialistic world, and only limited to this world. If you don't have the hereafter in the focus, then atheism would make sense to you. Religion is never going to make sense to you.
Yeah. So that makes obviously a lot of sense. Now, our audience, we would also like you to the youth club pages in Pakistan, go to organizations like Live Deen. In the Urdu language, you have other organizations working in the youth, like I think Azan Institute is there. Youth Club obviously is in all the cities of Pakistan, yani the major capitals in Pakistan, which is. So, go to their websites, go to their Facebook feeds, go to the YouTube pages, and the brothers are doing a tremendous job. All the brothers, all the organizations. I'm not going to be singling out one organization. MashaAllah, all organizations are contributing. In whatever shape and fashion they are. May Allah, inshallah, help them, and may Allah reward them for this tremendous effort, which all of them are trying to do, inshallah. Now, Brother Imran, obviously from, again, a Western perspective. Now, this, I think, sister, she's asking a question that what should the youth do for themselves and for others? Not only, I think she's asking from an atheistic perspective, but in order to implement deen, in order to really understand the deen first of all, and then implement the deen on themselves, and then probably the rest of the society.
It's a very good question. So the way I'll answer in two parts. The first thing I'd advise the youth is, number one, take a stock of what you believe and where you find yourself in your life at the moment and the world that you're a part of. So before you even get to studying, really think things through for yourself and really take a snapshot of your life and see the direction it's going in. Because one thing we would realize, and this is a part of our human nature, is that when we're not connected to Allah, and therefore we don't know who we are, because as Allah says in the Quran, don't be like those who forgot Allah and Allah made them forget themselves. If we don't know our Creator, we won't really know ourselves. We'll be lost. And we need to therefore look at ourselves and really ask ourselves the question: am I truly happy and satisfied in the direction that I'm taking in my life? Am I really happy with the way where my life is going? Am I happy with who I am? And once you've really looked into this, and especially the times we live in, what's going to be obvious is that most of us are going to find ourselves in the position that we are living very, if you like, hedonistic type lifestyles, meaning it's all about pleasure, maximum pleasure, doing whatever leads to joy and happiness and pleasure from a worldly perspective. And when we see this, one thing we'll realize is that I'm doing all of these things, and I've probably been doing all of these things for several years, like whatever I want to do, however I want to live. I'm still not truly satisfied and happy. I don't feel fulfilled. And that should be a sign for them that the direction they're taking isn't the right direction. It's empty from that perspective, right? So once you get to that realization, the next thing to realize is really understand the foundations of Islam properly. And I think this is something that's really missing. A lot of the time, and as Brother Waji mentioned as well, a lot of the time what happens is there's a disconnect between the ulama, the scholars, and the youth. Because, and unfortunately, most of the time when the youth watch or try to refer to the scholars and the religiously inclined, what they normally hear, unfortunately, is do this, don't do this. This is good, this is bad, which is important in the deen, no doubt. But it's not at the top of the list of priorities for someone that finds themselves in that position, right? So it's very important for them to realize that that's an aspect of Islam, no doubt. God has given us a way of life. He's told us what's good for us and what's bad for us. But before even that, before worrying about that, they need some foundational principles that have to be in place. So just give you one example, one of the things that really needs to be understood is who is Allah, and what is our relationship with our Creator? Where do we stand as far as our Creator is concerned? So once we understand from the Islamic perspective that Allah is the Creator, He is the one that is all powerful, the all knowing. He is the being that wants best for us. He wants best for us. Hence He gave us the Quran. Hence He gave us revelation throughout history. Why? Not because Allah is going to benefit, but for our benefit, so that we're guided. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as He says in the Quran, that He made everything in existence subservient to us. He's made everything of service to us. That's how much He loves us and cares for us. And once we understand that, and we also reflect upon our reality and who are we, because again, one of the misunderstandings is that we have we develop and we become deluded in thinking about ourselves is that we are the be all and end all. It's all about us. The human being is the greatest thing ever, right? That, we can do anything and everything. But if we really remind ourselves of, number one, where we came from and where we're going, that would really humble us. We come from something dirty and we're going to go into the dirt. And we're sandwiched between these two dirty states for a very limited period of time, maybe 50 years, 60 years. And that will really humble the human being. So when you realize who your creator is and who you are, and you realize Allah knows best, you don't know best, He wants best for you, you think you want best for yourself, but you end up doing things which are bad for you, right? So the most rational thing to do for a human being is submit to the creator and to obey Him. Right? It's about submission. We shouldn't be falling into the same trap, unfortunately, which we are. We shouldn't be falling into the same trap that Shaitan fell into. It's a very powerful story that Allah reminds us of in the Quran. When Allah told him to bow down to Adam, as did all the angels immediately, he refused. And what was his reasons for refusing? I am better than him. I'm made of this, he's made of this. So essentially what we see here for the first time in history is a being deluded into thinking he knows better than his creator, right? He's reasoning with Allah, and by him reasoning with Allah, what he's showing us is that he is saying, in other words, I know better than you, Allah. And that's exactly the same trap that we fall into today in the 21st century. Oh, why did Allah tell me to do this? Why did Allah tell me not to do this? We are acting in the same way. What we're saying by doing this is that we know better than Allah. And we fall into this because we don't have those foundations in place. So firstly, take a check of your life. And secondly, really get to grips with the foundations, the foundational philosophical principles of the deen, of Islam. And once you understand this, it should put everything else into perspective, inshallah.
Okay, Jazakallah khair. Brother Baji, another question from, I think, Brother Muzammil. Don't you think most of the youth are tempted towards atheism just to get out of the restraints of religion? And as you answer that, please do also answer that what as parents, because a number of parents would also think to this either or the kind of the coming weeks. So what is your advice to the parents specifically? I have no idea in this day of, again, different type of feeds which are happening, different types of influences, which people are, specifically our youth are getting hit from all directions. What is your suggestion to specifically the parents as well?
Okay.
After answering this first question from Muzammil.
First and foremost, I wasn't able to hear your question properly because I'm getting a little breakage from your end. But I think I was able to get the grasp the understanding of your question. Now, Brother Muzammil has asked, don't you think most of the youth are tempted towards atheism just to get out of the restraints of religion? I think this is one of the major reasons, but also the fact that a lot of people think, and the most common question they ask, why are certain things happening in my life or in the world around us? And they're unable to comprehend the fact that, if there is a God, why is evil happening around us? Why am I suffering so much? And, they raise these questions and they look at it from an emotional perspective. And yes, one of the huge reasons that people have become so much a slave to the very, to the very, their desires, that now it's become impossible for them to be able to submit to God. Not realizing that, yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has asked us to follow certain rules, not for His sake, but our sake, to be able to live in a very, a peaceful society. So one of the things that, people make it as an excuse. And, they talk about Dawkins, they talk about all these things, but, they've actually haven't, really read anything about it. If you talk to them, ask them about the terminologies that have been used in their books, they hardly know about it. So it's more of an excuse that they're making in terms of justifying that whatever they're doing is actually right. Because religion becomes a hurdle for their, for them being in their comfort zone. Another reason is maybe having a bad, marriage life, seeing a bad married life in their parents' life, or being able to see a lot of suffering happening around them, and they ask this question why is this being not corrected by God? Of course, we need to be able to instill in our youth that God is all powerful, but also He's all wise. And need to be able to understand, and this is the very example we get from Surah Al-Kahf, that there's so many things that you may not be able to understand, they're happening around you. So we need to be able to communicate the very idea, just like Amma Aisha radiallahu anha said, that if the very idea of don't do this and don't do this or do this would have been revealed, most of the people would have said like, we can't do this. But the idea of mercy, paradise, the fear of Jahannam, like Ibn Qayyim said, the balancing between the fear and the love of Allah. It needs to be instilled in the hearts of our young generation. We need to be able to communicate to them, be able to reach out to them. Yes, you might be sinning, but there is a lot of hope for you. Because a lot of people, commonly they say, if we can't ask these questions to the Imam in the masjid over there, we just get scolded. What kind of question? Correct. They need a lot of questions to be answered. They need to be made, they need to be comforted for the fact that, Allah's mercy is way above your sins. It's like greater than your sins. You have a chance to be able to come back. You don't need to be hopeless. So as far as the parents are concerned, I just share one incident with you that one of the parent was complaining that their children is watching too much of television during Ramadan. So the first question that I asked the parent was like, are you watching television in Ramadan? So like, yeah, I'm watching television in Ramadan. So like, how do you expect your child to be able to understand if you tell them to be able to not lie, but not be able to implement the very practice of religion? You've been telling them the entire life that money is what you need to be able to earn your respect through. And all you see in their life as religion is that when somebody gets born or somebody dies or somebody's getting married, that's where they see the religion. And when they grow older and they start to live their life based on the same values, you tell them, no, your religion tells you not to do these. And they're like, what? You've never taught me about the value of religion in my life. And now you're telling me that I can't do this when I've gotten used to be able to, live my life based on my whims and desires. And you're telling me that religion is something which tells me not to do this. The most easiest way out is for them is to be able to say, okay, fine, I should eliminate religion out of my life and be able to get away from it so that I can actually continue in my comfort zone and be able to live the way I want to.
Okay, Jazakallah khair, Brother Waji. Let's try it once again. I'll try to play another short clip from this, individual called Rana Ahmed. So let me just give me 5 seconds to try to play it, inshallah.
But we can really be sure because they can show them identity, or we can say we are atheist. I think I can say like 3 or 4 millions. We can say.
Well, we know, don't we, that the Arabic translation of the God Delusion, which you read, you downloaded, has been downloaded, I think, 13 million times.
Wow.
The Arabic translation, I think 3 million of those in Saudi Arabia, which is a very significant figure.
Yeah.
It does suggest something very encouraging. I've heard similar stories from Iran, that there's a very large groundswell, a very large underground of non-religious people.
Because
in Iran,
for us, if you start to search, or if you start to open your mind and to know other kind of thought, you will start with important book. And for us, it was like really your book in the beginning. And I think also in Iran, if they want to start with the book, they start with God Delusion also.
Yes. Well, the Richard Dawkins Foundation is starting a new project to translate several of my books, not just the God Delusion, into Arabic, Farsi, Indonesian, and Urdu for free download. So not to be published as paper books, but to be downloaded free. So we hope that will help people who still are in the predicament that you were in. So thank you.
The reason I played this clip is obviously the world out there, the likes of Richard Dawkins and his organization, and the organization of the atheists at large, they are going all out. Obviously, they are making a concerted effort to ensure that whether it's Iran, whether it's Saudi Arabia, whether it's the Middle East, whether it's other Muslim countries, they are going heavy with their mill, translating their works, ensuring that their material actually reaches all these different types of Muslim lands. So what is that, we need to do, again, amongst the Muslims, in order to ensure, because at the end of the day, it is going to be very difficult for such books to be, let's say, publicized in countries like Saudi Arabia. Alhamdulillah, it's going to be very difficult. But In other countries where there is much more leniency in terms of publications, like example, Malaysia, Turkey, Pakistan, Indonesia, even I would say some of the other Middle Eastern countries, this literature is just going to go heavy in there. So what is, again, Brother Imran, I'm particularly asking you, that your experience again, have you ever come across such kind of discussions or organizations working in the Middle East, other Muslim countries, and you've experienced such stuff?
Yeah, so firstly, I'd like to point out that you can see from the clip as well, he seems more concerned about his publications than her and what she went through. And this obviously highlights that he has a clear agenda to promote an idea. And he seems like he's a man, obviously he's in his late stages of his life. On atheism, he hasn't got any meaning anyway. And he seems to be living with this ambition of leaving a legacy behind. And that seems to be something that drives him. But the issue is, I mean, see, when it comes to these publications, we have to remember that Richard Dawkins is recognized maybe as the godfather, the main horseman of atheism at the moment. And his publications are getting out there. Loads of people are reading them. And even I would even say that in Saudi, although you may not get them in print form, but they'll be easily accessible online. And that's how the youth will be spreading them. So I think the thing here is this. I think what we need to do, what we can do, is firstly, us individuals that are involved in the dawah, is to read through this stuff and to do really clear rebuttals and responses to the content that they're putting out there. And one thing we'll realize is when you read this stuff, for example, whether it's the Delusion or Richard Dawkins' more recent book, Outgrowing God, you will see his ideas a lot of his ideas are outdated. A lot of them have already been refuted. And to be very frank, I mean, in his most recent book, Outgrowing God, we have a full response to this. It's on my channel as well on Epistemics. So if anyone that's interested can watch that. But one thing you'll realize is that he predominantly is speaking to the Muslim world. Although when you look at his views in regards to Islam, he seems like someone that hasn't read up on Islam. He seems like someone that hasn't even probably read the Quran, right? He makes some very fundamental basic errors which are present in his book, and anyone that goes through it can pick them up. So he's and I don't understand this. I mean, if someone like Richard Dawkins, who is considered to be such a leading figure of atheism, it wants to address the Muslim world, one, he should do his research properly, and secondly, he should speak to Muslims. I mean, he doesn't want to speak to any Muslim. You know, he doesn't want to debate any Muslim that can hold their ground and defend the tradition properly on an intellectual level. He's been challenged by many people. I believe Hamza Zortzes offered him to debate once several years ago. He refused. Hijab has recently asked him to debate. He refused. Or he's not even paying attention. He seems like someone that just wants to push an agenda, an idea, and not want to have to deal with Muslims. And that shows the weakness of his position.
Imran, that is something which they'll continue to do. You know, the point is not whether they will not push their agenda. Obviously, the point is that they are doing their part, and is it enough? Let's say understanding, or is there enough work or enough dawah happening within the Muslim world to kind of circumvent these philosophies and ideas? That is the question, because they will, the kufr, the taghut will play their role.
Yes.
Whatever happens. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a hard question to answer, because from what I've seen myself, there is a lot of brilliant work that's going on in Pakistan, in India. Like, for example, at IRA, we have several outreach specialists. One brother is Indian. He works in India. Obviously, Youth Club and all of the other organizations like Live Deen in Pakistan are doing phenomenal work to counter these narratives and to educate Muslims on the Deen. In the UK, we have several organizations which are doing the same. So the work is happening, no doubt. But we have to remember that, we have to remember that these individuals, as weak as their ideas are, they have a lot of push. They're getting a lot of push, a lot of promotion, and you'll see this with Dawkins and Harris. So we need to carry on doing the work. We need to do more. I really believe there's not enough. There's never enough. We have to keep doing this, keep responding to these people, keep putting out content, and at the end of the day, not become disheartened, because we have to remember we're doing this for the sake of Allah, and whatever we do, inshallah, the rewards are with Allah. And we shouldn't be disheartened at the fact, look at Dawkins, he's got a book out there and it's got millions of, this, that, and the other. We need to keep doing what we can. And we have to remember we have the truth. And as Allah says, the truth, will vanquish, it will destroy falsehood. And falsehood by its very nature is weak and it's frail, and it will be destroyed, inshallah.
Inshallah. Brother Baji, would you like to read the question on screen now and answer it, please?
Sure. Before answering this question, just commenting on the video, these things are possible which Dawkins was planning to do because of the availability of resources. And, we as religious organizations, as Dawah organizations, are tackling the very idea of to be able to get those resources so that we can actually distribute our materials, for free. And this is where the role of the state comes in. I think Saudi is doing a marvelous job in terms of being able to make the resources available. We need to do this in other Muslim countries as well. And we need not to worry about whether Dawkins is going to publish his stuff online because, Batil is bound to get perished because once we just need to make our little efforts. And that's what the amazing work is being done by Live Deen, Adhan, Youth Club, all these organizations. And we need to be able to unite our forces and be able to come forward, do our part, and leave the rest upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we need to understand that as much as they can try, because they have the advantage currently to be able to have those resources. They are being funded heavily to be able to inject these ideas so that this remains some sort of disagreement, this whole edginess amongst the entire Muslims about their idea of faith. So educational sector needs to play an important role, because if our educationalists are going to be unaware of the very idea where the roots are of how important religion is for them, if they are going to be going to have that inferiority complex. If in this video, if they would have been a dark-skinned Desi talking about something about releasing his work, trust me, nobody would have been very much interested. But it's a Gora guy, it's a white man talking about what I should be, it's me dictating you how your life should be about how you need to be successful in life. If you adopt these values, which I'm telling you, you would be the superpower of this world. So teachers need to educate themselves. We as dais need to be able to come in the role of education. I see a lot of people, because of the financial issues, they're not coming in the area of education. And I do understand for a fact that it's difficult. And I've seen the education, so I've been part of the education sector for almost 15 years. But the point is, hardly people are aware of their own religion when it comes to practicing. Yes, they might know how to the basics to be able to offer 5-10 prayers, but they need to be able to develop the love of God. They need to know who Allah is. They need to be introduced regarding who Allah is, about what religion actually demands from them. Why Allah actually demands them to be able to follow the religion is for their own benefit. And when they will see that solution, when they will see impressive personalities, good role models talking about religion, giving them good example, if we ourselves would make sacrifice and go out on the streets, give street dawah, invite them towards Islam, and reach out to them, that is the very power of a religion, that they can publish thousands of books, and one activity, one street dawah, and the entire backbone of their work can get destroyed.
Correct. Jazakallah khair. Absolutely right. May Allah, inshallah, allow our organizations to work with the same passion, inshallah. Now, Brother Imran, another question which normally is kind of coming up, especially in the context of this. Again, Brother Baji can comment maybe later how much is it really relevant to the Muslim countries like Pakistan. But I do believe that the war in the West actually is moving from following a particular mazhab or sect to actually ensuring that our Muslim children remain Muslim. Is this a correct kind of understanding?
There is sure, absolutely. So most of the organizations that we see in the UK, Islamic organizations, they are focusing on those basics. They're attracting the youth, which is a brilliant thing, so that the youth could be well acquainted with the basics of the deen and the foundations of the deen, and develop love for the deen, love for the sake of love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, get to know the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so they can sort of practically start implementing the deen in their life again. So absolutely, there is this, but at the same time, there is a lot of, unfortunately, unnecessary sectarianism which is still prevalent amongst the Muslim community. And to be honest, from a non-Muslim dawah perspective, it's doing a lot of damage as well. which is sad. That as Muslims, we sure, we'll disagree on many things, but it's to be done with respect, and it's to be done, especially in the age of social media, it should be done with wisdom and at a certain place. It shouldn't be brought online for the world to see. So I have a big gripe with this, because I think it's not, from a purely dawah perspective, is doing a lot of damage. And if anything, stuff like this also pushes the youth away from the deen, because the thinking is, okay, on one end we're saying, you're following the religion of the creator of the heavens and the earth, the one that created everything, and he's given us this universal way of life. But on the other end, you're debating with and fighting with each other on some very trivial matters and making it public. So they can't reconcile these two things sometimes. So that, although we don't see that as a big issue, but that does, fuel the fire further. So we have to apply a lot more wisdom from that perspective as well, I think, inshallah. But yeah, definitely, to answer your question, I think there is a collective movement to bring the youth back to the deen and to get them to really understand Islam properly.
Yeah, the reason, brother, I asked this question is because, honestly speaking, as you've rightly pointed out, that there's a lot of work is happening amongst the various kind of organization groups, unfortunately the mazahib, etc., etc. But I personally believe, again, this is what my understanding is, that, we need to move away from that in order to really ensure that actually our youth remain with the broad spectrum of being a Muslim.
Yeah.
Because that is the real fight
focus
in the West now.
Yeah, the focus. I mean, what the Muslims and non-Muslims need in the West is the basic understanding of how amazing and beautiful this deen is, and not only that, it can answer the questions people have today, but how Islam provides the solutions for the problems of the world that we live in today. And that's something that people are unaware of, that Islam actually resolves the issues that the world faces today, this godless world faces today. And that's something, inshallah, people will slowly come to know.
And Brother Baji, again, it's obviously a lot more complex from a Pakistani context. It's not so simple because, Pakistan is a very, mashallah, it has loads of other stuff which I don't want to say. But again, from your experience, how do you come about and ensure that actually you are able to do your work in a way, in a fashion which really would make a difference? MashaAllah, which you guys are already doing, but how do you actually come across? How do you actually unite other organizations around some common platform? How do we reach that?
Of course, we're dealing with our own differences, and currently, I think the sectarian differences is of huge concern. Other than atheism, maybe, and God forbid, maybe 5 years from now, things would be changing, maybe. And but currently, atheism is not much of an issue in our country. Yes, it's there, and there are certain organizations or individuals who are actively trying to promote the very idea that it's on a very large scale. It's growing on a very large scale. But yes, sectarianism is creating a lot of damage, but we need to be able to understand, and people are understanding that there will always be differences, rather than having this ideal idea in our mind that a religion where no differences are going to be there. We need to be able to welcome those differences and not be able to speak about certain sensitive topics, like some speakers have been able to talk about preservation of Quran, regardless of how they were misquoted or anything. Then these Christians actually use those statements and take these debates amongst the Muslim speakers and be able to use it as an evidence, like, look, this is what you people are saying. And you, instead of being able to focus on them regarding a particular message and be able to invite them towards Islam, you become more focused regarding refuting that particular individual. So over here, our Ramadan shows are more about making different scholars from different madhahib sit over there, argue amongst themselves. But the very idea of individuals who look beyond to religion beyond this, they're like, what is this going on? I thought Ramadan was more about connecting with God, about positivity. If I watch these shows for 1 hour, I see them arguing and trying to be able to, refute each other, and it just creates this discomfort in my mind. And we need to be able to promote the very idea that how religion can actually bring peace in your life. We see these celebrities. Recently, there was one guy who actually on Instagram has around, Indian celebrity, has 10 million followers. Having everything in his life, but he was still going through certain difficulty. He actually committed suicide. Now people are realizing that all this running after this world is actually not going to make them happy. And slowly people are realizing that there is more to this life than what they have been told by this, entire system about having money, celebrity, fame, likes, views, etc. So people are slowly coming towards this. But if we keep on disagreeing with each other, yes, there are going to be certain valid differences of opinion, but if we keep on fighting and be involved in our internal differences, we would never be able to invite other people towards Islam. So we need to be able to look from a broader perspective. Our responsibility is to be able to invite people towards Islam. Alhamdulillah, organizations are realizing it, but we can't do this on a large scale until and unless we don't join our forces. The state does not support us. We don't promote the very positive idea of religion and be able to go out on the streets, education institutes, create individuals who can actually play an important role. It cannot be achieved without a teamwork, and we need to be able to work together.
Absolutely, no doubt about it. So we only have kind of 2-3 minutes to go. So Brother Imran, first, if you can give some key messages from discussion, if you want to kind of highlight one particular point of advice to our audience.
Okay, so the one thing I'd just like to say to all of the brothers and sisters that may be watching is, number one, realize that in the absence of Islam, without Allah, life is meaningless. It has no meaning. You may initially think anything goes, you can do whatever you want, enjoy yourself, have maximize pleasure from every perspective, but eventually you're going to run down into a hole and you're going to realize these things aren't cutting it because they're not filling that void or emptiness that's inside you. No amount of money, no amount of material possessions, nothing is going to fill that hole. The only way you're going to find true peace and satisfaction and tranquility is when you align yourself with the truth, you turn back to your Creator and you submit to Him and worship Him. That's when you're going to find true peace and tranquility. And at the end of the day, I'll leave you with this. As soon as you're born into this world, you are born into a state of slavery. You're not free. No one is free. This idea of freedom that we're sold today is false. It's an illusion. Everyone is a slave to something or the other. The choice you have and the choice every single one of us has to make is, are you going to be a slave of something that's created and ephemeral and weak like you are? Or are you going to be a slave to the Creator of the heavens and the earth? And through submitting yourself to God, you will fulfill the purpose of your existence, which is to know Him and to worship Him. And through doing this, you'll find true peace and tranquility, good in this life and the best in the hereafter. That's the choice we have to make. Who are you a slave of? The dunya or the Creator? That's essentially what we have to decide.
Brother Wajih, key action from your side?
Yes. We need to realize, and my message to the youth would be that the idea is that you need to free yourself from the slavery of the creation, like Brother Imran said, and become slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because when you become a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's the highest degree you have. And when you become a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it frees you, liberates you from all the slaveries of this world. And you will never be happy. Allah bi zikril tatma'innul qulub. You will never be happy trying to seek happiness in this world, because this world does not have the resources to be able to keep you happy or give you happiness. So know for a fact that realize that certain people need to understand that this world is short-lived. Your idea of a perfect world is not going to be possible, and you need to be able to focus on your hereafter. Understand that your religion is beautiful. It answers a lot of your questions. You need to be able to support the Dawah organizations who are making any effort whatsoever. Support them in any way to be able to make the word of Allah reach out to people. And as much as you find certain individuals imperfect, not being able to do the part, the beauty of Dawah is, and the beauty of the word of God is, it will make its way in the hearts of people. So understand that you need to increase your love with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, submit to Him. He will allow that peace to be in your life and liberate you from all the worry that you have around you. There are going to be tests. This life is not going to be free from tests. And Allah will surely test you. But know that you will be answerable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the afterlife, and all the blessings that you have. There is going to be a day when you will be answerable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala regarding all of that. So prepare for that. Understand that the religion answers all your questions, and be able to give that peace and tranquility in your life, and be able to work in your limited capacity to be able to spread the word of God. And that is how things are going to get better, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair, Brother Wajih. Again, Jazakallah khair for the audience. Apologies, we were not able to take all the questions. They are still coming through, but apologies for that. Number two is that you will be able to find relevant information with regards to Youth Club, Live Deen, Azan Institute, the different organizations in Pakistan. If you just type of a search, we will also, inshallah, be covering yani pasting the different links also to the different links of brother Imran's and brother Waji's pages, etc. Go on to them, learn about Islam, inshallah, and hopefully, you know, with our combined efforts in across the globe, any type of organization which is working towards the real substance to real conceptualize Islam from its truthfulness perspective. So it is going to be, inshallah, taking over all the different adyan which are out there. So jazakallah khair, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum.